Dean Prasad. Pleasant good evening, sir, and it's a pleasure always to have you here on The Observer. First of all, Mr. Prasad, what happened yesterday with that 4 p.m. draw? I know a lot of people have been talking about it, and one of the things that was said is that TTT Limited, the television station, would like to advise the public that on November 15th, yesterday, a machine error at the TTL affected the 4 p.m. playway draw number 22596. This was a TTL error and does not affect the integrity of the NLCB draw. And TTL takes this opportunity to apologize to the NLCB and the gaming public and has taken all actions to prevent any reoccurrence of such event. This must leave you and, of course, the NLCB merchants asking, is this even the answer? I mean, when you look at what is being said there, that and nothing equates to the same thing.
To those of you joining me now, this is a morning show that we are addressing some issues today, starting with the Trinidad and Tobago television release on what took place with what appeared to the public as a rigged draw of NLCB, and this has far-reaching repercussions. Mikey K of The Observer had an interview with the head of the Gaming Dealers Association, and I'm replaying that for you, and then I'm going to play my media release this morning.
Mr. Prasad.
Okay, good night, Mikey, and good night, to the viewers. Yeah, so you're right.
Please share the video so that people know that I am on at 7:07 in the morning. Today is the 17th of the 11th.
Equates to nothing. That really is not an answer. And to tell us that you are sorry and it's a machine error and it does not affect the integrity of the draw doesn't mean that the problem has disappeared. It just really says nothing, and the public is still suspicious about the drawing of the playway, and they are now questioning whether they have a fair chance of winning a mark now, and that will of course affect our sales.
Yeah, because as merchants, you of course are the first line of this service. So people would come in, they would come in and they would interact with yourself and other people who work on behalf of the agent and say, listen, I don't trust this, the integrity doesn't seem to, is very shoddy, I'm not getting transparency in many of these things. How do you then deal with that when people start to question it, and when you have the governing body basically being removed from it, and you have the television station saying it's my fault?
Right, and so that is the point. That we have nothing to offer to the public. There is no sensible explanation given as yet. I heard on the news tonight that the chairman, Mr. Nantes, is awaiting further investigation and a more detailed report from TTT. So we await that as well. But right now, as of today, even today, a lot of people, a lot of customers were giving us problems and even abusing us as to the integrity of the game. And of course, we are losing customers to the illegal play. You know, they are going again, more so now, in droves to the illegal play. So NLCB is losing money, the agents are losing money. And for the life of me, they are not doing anything to address the issue.
And Mr. Prasad, I think that is one of the biggest questions here. I mean, when you have something that is generating the amount of revenue that it's generating, and one would think, because, again, I don't want to get too into anything here, but many people ask, well, where does the money go? I mean, and it seems as though when it's a certain amount is the only time that you have a winner. But at least in the U.S., and other parts of North America, they can tell you it goes for schools, it goes for agriculture, wherever it goes to. And however, that is not questioned here in Trinidad and Tobago, and I don't want to put you into that. But at the same time, when you have something generating this amount of revenue, one would think that the government would take it upon themselves and say it is my responsibility to ensure that this runs, because the people who are doing it, the merchants, or should I say the vendors and the agents, you're paying taxes. You are paying taxes, you are abiding by the law, you're doing everything within the realm of the law, but then there are those who are operating outside of the law and circumventing all of the proper procedures and seem to be getting away with it. How do you deal with that?
That is the problem, and we are very frustrated in terms of dealing with that. We are frustrated, and not faced with all of that. We are faced with the criminal element as well. There's a high risk of being a operator now. And I have written numerous letters and sent emails to the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance, both of them, because I wasn't getting any sort of redress or any sort of action from the NLCB. And we're not getting any action from these two gentlemen as well. And
this amounts to criminal wrongdoing, eh? Don't for a minute think that this is as simple as TTT's release. I want to read TTT's release for you. TTT Limited, TTTL, would like to advise that on November 15, 2022, a machine error at TTTL affected the 4 p.m. playway draw number 22596. This was a TTTL error and does not affect the integrity of the National Lotteries Control Board draw. TTTL takes this opportunity to apologize to the NLCB and the gaming public and has taken all actions to prevent any recurrence of such event. November 16, 2022. The Progressive Empowerment Party, the organization which I lead, put this out this morning. Media release, investigate NLCB and TTT. It is my view that what happened at that playway draw is not answered by that TTT release. It appears based on what was witnessed live on TV as if the game is rigged. We need a better explanation of how the draw could be announced live before the ball hits the tray. The only way for the TTT release to make sense is if time travel is possible. Other than that, there are only two other explanations. The draw is not live, which opens further speculation to a myriad of other wrongs, or that the game is in fact rigged. There has to be a proper explanation that makes sense to the laws of physics, failing which an investigation should be launched to uncover what took place. Until then, all games should be suspended until the integrity of what is being sold to the public can be verified and certified. Understand this. What took place could easily be an act of criminal misconduct or worse. The management of TTT should be fired for trying to hoodwink the public, and a proper investigation launched that includes the police and the owners of the gaming system technology. Phillip Edward Alexander, political leader, Progressive Empowerment Party. Now, some of you I know would be tempted to come on the wall and tell me we've known it's been rigged and that's the reality of Trinidad and we like it so and nothing will come of this. And if you keep engaging in that self-defeating nonsense, nothing will. The reason I speak up on issues is the same reason you should speak up on issues. And that is to get the state to take action and investigate what took place. Because if you don't, then this would continue to be business as usual in Trinidad and Tobago. And that said, there's something else that I saved to play for you. Now, some of you may be wondering, why is Phillip live at 7 o'clock? I'll tell you why. This morning I got 2 media interviews. I'll backtrack. Because one of the interviews I just got, and Satish has to get the recording because the online link wasn't working for the time that I was there. So we're working to get the interview, and Satish was asked to record it. So we will know if we have that interview. Let me explain something to you. If the Progressive Empowerment Party had ever gotten its rightful share of media exposure, there'd be no NTA, Patriotic Front, MSJ. There'd be none of that. The size of the following of the Progressive Empowerment Party belies the fact that in the 7 years this party exists, We've got 2 interviews on TV6. 2. We've got 2. I think we got 2 interviews or 3 interviews on CNC3 in the 7 years. Contrast and compare that with Peter George owned NTA that Gary Griffith fronts, that gets media time every 15 minutes to go and talk foolishness about meritless. The price of Karaili go up in the country this morning. The NTA will put out a release and tie the price of Karaili to Gary not getting the commissioner work. Yesterday, Gary's NTA put out a media release signed by Facebook porn king Tim Timal. Tim Timal is supposed to be, I want to get Gary's release and read what it's signed as so I don't lead you astray. You see, everybody in the country knows how Gary writes. Everybody knows how Gary speaks. But now, and it's in these little things that is going to upset me further with Gary Griffith. Gary Griffith, if they cannot trust you to be honest in little things, how can they ever trust you to be honest with big things? How could you be trusted at all? Your media release of the 14th of November 2022 is replete with all manner of information about COVID and law enforcement and murder statistics, and it's signed by Tim Timal. Now, I will bet body parts that Tim Timal not only did not write it, that he cannot write it. That he doesn't understand the things that you spoke about in your long-winded, usual Gary Griffith, every word in the dictionary release. And Tim only has whatever knowledge he has of national security based on his little time with you as your social media disruptor when you were commissioner of police. And I'm saying to you, Gary, you are ruining any chance of people ever giving you any kind of support. And whoever is deluding you that your 89% rating when you were commissioner of police translates is the same people who are deluding you that the rank of captain leaves the army with you. They don't. And somebody needs to wake you up. You've been allowed to stew in your own little bubble for so long. You've bullied people away from being able to tell you, brother, you're talking shit. Stop trying to hoodwink the public using a political vehicle to get yourself back the commissioner work. Stop it. Because the rest of us who are outside here working at the politics are doing it for better Trinidad and Tobago, and at best now you're a distraction. And when you tell me in our conversations that I need to focus on Keith Rowley, I want you to understand, anybody who is in the political guile has to be considered our political adversaries, if not enemies. If we are all fighting for the same singular prize, then I cannot let you continue to spew nonsense and let the people be fooled while pretending that our common enemy is the PNM. Trinidad's enemy is everybody who is involved in politics for naked self-interest. Gary Griffith, if the NTA is a serious political party, why is your deputy political leader, Nikolai, sharing posts as also the political leader of his political party? Why is Errol Fabian still telling people that he in NTA for now, that is a suck it and see? He gonna try and see if this work out to know if he gonna stick around for the long play. If the National Transformation Movement Alliance is a real political party, Gary, then insist to your friends in the media that they have integrity and give Phillip Edward Alexander equal time to you. And if you think, Gary, that your numbers are bigger or that you have a larger following than the Progressive Empowerment Party, test the water. Let's not continue to try to rig the system, and you're benefiting from a rigged system because you get media that you don't deserve. They're using you as a dancing pony. It is a game to be played to distract the public from the fact that the media owners are themselves. The media owners, not the journalists. The media owners are themselves the beneficiaries from the mismanagement of the country. So who does the people turn to? If the fourth estate are in bed with the third estate, then what are we, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, to do? This is what we're fighting for. And I want you to understand that when I speak with fact. This is the kind of fact that they don't want you to have. This is the kind of fact that they try to hide from you. I want you to hear this, and I'll come back to you on it. But it's important that you know what we're fighting for. The nation state of Norway, when it got its oil, because Norway got oil almost accidentally. In fact, if it wasn't for an Iraqi that was born, if it was not for an Iraqi that was born that was married to a Norwegian, whose son was born with cerebral palsy, if it wasn't for that, Norway would never be in this conversation. Trinidad earned $3 trillion US dollars from oil and gas. We are broken and in debt. Trinidad earned $3 trillion from oil, $3 trillion US dollars from oil and gas, but we are broken and in debt. Norway earned $1.3 trillion from oil and gas. The difference between Norway and Trinidad and Tobago. Now, there are people who are going to say other countries as well. But as I had to just tell Andy Johnson on an interview, regardless of where else corruption or atrocities or flooding or anything else takes place, it's not my concern. My concern is Trinidad and Tobago. And I can't go and fix other countries, but I could certainly fix Trinidad and Tobago. Now, sorry for the distraction, and I'm looking because I'm also sharing the video this morning with the people who need to know that we're live, because we get blocked for Facebook notifications. Anyway, the $1.3 trillion US that Norway earned from their oil and gas is by law invested in a fund that belongs to all the people of Norway. It cannot be withdrawn from. The interest is used for infrastructure and other development in Norway. And as of today's valuation, every single citizen of Norway owns one share of that company, and that one share translates to each and every Norwegian owning $242,000 US sitting in a bank account in an investment fund, earning them interest. It was $176,000 US per person 5 years ago. So saying that it's $242,000 US today per person tells you what proper use of your oil money is. You see, Norway didn't take its money to build Goodwood Park, Valsane, Gulfview, Fairways, Sinclair. It didn't use its money for greedy Trinidadians, corrupt politicians, greedy businessmen, dishonest businessmen, and accounting firms to gang up and form a contract mafia and turn former cloth stores into HDC house building contractors, selling houses to the state for 10 times their value, and then the state sell it back to P&M party card holders for 10% of that value, forcing the taxpayers to now subsidize the loss that they just paid for. In effect, charging the public twice. If there was a proper government in Trinidad and Tobago and it audited just the HDC and UDCOT, prime ministers, former prime ministers of this country would go to jail. Would go to jail. Just HDC and UDCOT. But there are crimes, other crimes just as vast. Wasa and Trinidad and Tobago's water management that causes the flooding that led to them engaging in a $300 million loan to explore how to solve flooding in a country where flooding only takes place because we do not manage our water. I'll tell you what that means. I am not a beneficiary of the $300 million of water research grant signed yesterday by the government. But I'll tell you this. Anywhere that water collects at the start of a flood is where we should build our retention ponds. The word retention means to keep. So we're not just trying to solve the flooding. All through Trinidad and Tobago, the Met Office and others have instruments that measure the volume of rain that falls on quadrants and segments of the country. And we could tell you, if they've been keeping the records, we could tell you down to a gallon how much water falls on every part or has fallen on every part by day, by date, by time. We could tell you if they've been keeping the data. Let me explain you how this instrument works. It's a simple beaker in a funnel that is used when rain is falling to measure by inch. When you hear them say 6 inches of rain, you may not know what that means. But 6 inches of rain in Trinidad and Tobago could translate that 6 inches of rain fell over the western peninsula of Trinidad and Tobago could translate to 50 million gallons of water because of what 6 inches falling in this beaker means to 6 inches falling all over. And that information is supposed to be kept to guide the future for planning, which brings us to this. So we could know, and we've had El Niños and La Niñas before, so we could know as of today what has been the most rain that has ever fallen on any sector of Trinidad. We have that information. It's not like it's a mystery. We know so that if an abnormal event takes place, you can, when you contrast it to the data, and if we've been keeping data for the last 100 years, if you say that the most water that has ever fallen in Maraval is 6 inches or 7 inches of water over 2 hours, and then for the first time in our history, 12 inches falls in 3 hours, we could blame it to global warming or whatever, an abnormality. It's a new high point. Because if we build our drainage capacity to be able to manage 6 inches over 2 hours and we get 12 inches over 3 hours, we'll have a flood. Because arithmetic will tell you that the volume capacity of the drainage system to hold the volume of water falling from the sky will not be able to take the extra inches of rain. there are also other contributing factors. Spatial planning with no plan. Spatial planning is why we have a town and country. And in Trinidad and Tobago, the spatial planning responsibility is divided between town and country and the regional corporations. Now, in a real country, any removal of ground cover would be counterbalanced with the requirement of retention ponds. If you go to do a development in Florida, for example, because I am dealing with people in a development in Florida, when you get back their version of a town and country approval and they give you the list of demands that they give you as to what is required for you to be able to do this development, included in that is surface water runoff management and retention ponds. You can't just run it off. You can't just build drains. You have to build drains to a catchment facility for the state to determine what it is doing with that water. Your job is, because you've removed the ground cover and put this water in motion, because if it hit the grass, it stopped right there. But if it hit the concrete and it collects with other water hitting the concrete, it starts to flow. You are responsible for that because you're putting concrete there. So when you put concrete there, you are responsible for where that collecting water flows and then collects. That's your responsibility. The state's job is to either take it from you or to tell you where to send it to. That's the state's responsibility. They own the water. And I say that to you, in Trinidad, $300 million was spent or assigned to be spent yesterday for knowledge that we already have. So taxpayers are going to spend $300 million today for this answer. Because no matter how convoluted, no matter how many pages, no matter how many graphs and pie charts they put, at the end of the day, manage the water through surface collection while precipitation is occurring is the solution to flooding. What is your worst case scenario per region? Multiply by 10% to accommodate for global warming and make that the new normal. Water collects on the bottom of Dennis Mahabia Street below O'Connor Street in Woodbrook when there is above normal rainfall and tide is in. That is serious factual information. When the tide is in and rain is falling heavy on the corner of Dennis Mahabia Street in Woodbrook, rain water starts to pool as the system gets overwhelmed to manage it right there. You can watch the flood begin at Dennis Mahabia Street. You could watch the flood begin on Brian Lara Promenade at the bottom of Richmond Street, St. Vincent Street, Pembroke Street, Frederick Street, Charlotte Street, Henry Street. You can watch the flood gather at the bottom of the pool. The sea used to be where the Brian Lara Promenade is now. The sea is not there. We've reclaimed the land. But we reclaimed the land without making allowance for the fact that water doesn't run uphill. And our drainage system was designed, as usual, all of our drainage for some reason is based on throw it in the sea. But when the tide is in at your waterfront, if the water level of the sea is above your drainage, there's nowhere for the water to go. Again, that's why you need retention ponds. Now, if you could identify all of these locations, I want to tell you something. To sink retention ponds, and I am going to do an exercise in one of our rivers. I am not telling you which river, but I'm going to show you the size of the cubic capacity of existing manufacturable water systems that we could drop in the beds of our rivers, just there. And if we did it, Upper Diego Martin River, Upper Maraval River, Upper St. Anne's River, if we put retention ponds there, if we knew that for every act of precipitation during the rainy season, the Diego Martin River that ends at Westmoreland will dump 50 million gallons of water into the sea, And if we knew that the consumption requirement for Diego Martin West, Diego Martin Northeast, and Diego Martin Central is 45 million gallons of water, we want that water. Now people will tell you that the water running in the ground, you don't want to hold that water. That's nonsense. 99% of the water in all of our reservoirs is groundwater. It's groundwater. In Trinidad and Tobago, we have laws. The consequences of the laws should be updated because it's like $200 for fouling rivers and streams because water is essential to life. We enforce nothing. We enforce no anti-litter laws so that when it floods, we could say, well, it's them cause it. They throw the fridge, they throw the stove, they throw the bottle, they throw the KFC box. Okay, fine. We've had that same nonsense narrative for what, 15, 20, 30 years now? I've known it since I'm alive and I'm 55. So we have the same argument every single time. I remember when Peter O'Connor, who's also an environmentalist, besides being a columnist for the Newsday, he wrote that the size of the Crystal Stream River was designed to pair with and accommodate development on either side of the Crystal Stream Highway that stopped at Sierra Leone Road. That highway was doubled and doubled again to Wendy Fitzwilliams Boulevard in Diamond Vale. A new river was added alongside that highway and connected to the Crystal Stream River, which was designed to manage the capacity of the development and the highway associated with Crystal Stream. So when you doubled the river, the length of the river, but didn't double the cubic capacity of the river, you created all of the floods that happened in Diego Martin in the past and in the future. You've created them. In fact, he went on to say, at the Sierra Leone connection, where the two rivers meet, during heavy rains, it is like attempting to flush a toilet into a teacup. And it makes the point. We've never managed our water. I am saying to Trinidad and Tobago today, I am willing to run Wasa for free. Within 3 years, and I'm saying 3 years, it could be less. But I'm saying 3 years because at first, you have to deal with all of the political bullshit that comes with everybody, mother, father, brother, sister, cousin, son, that have a work in Wasa. We need to identify who the actual engineers and the actual workers are. You know when you pass and you see 12 people around a job site, only 2 people working? I need to find out who the 2 people are. I need to make sure that we identify our exact asset base to run it. And I want to tell you this. Decentralizing Wasa into multiples of water sourcing and management companies disconnected from each other is step one. Step one. Sourcing the water that you need so that nobody in this country would ever have to have a water pump or a water tank again requires that you understand in each community, constituency, region, how the water comes to be. Diego Martin, Chagaramas, especially Tucker Valley. Tucker Valley is so wet, moss grows 12 months out of the year. Tucker Valley has so much water that it could quite possibly, if it was physically sensible, to pipe water from a Tucker Valley reservoir. We could build a massive lake in Tucker Valley and pipe that water to the entire country. You would never run out of water. And that is just Tucker Valley in Diego Martin. If I got the job to run Wasa, in 3 years, 2 things will happen. Every single home on the grid would have water 25 hours a day, 8 days a week. No need for any tank or any pump or water trucks of any kind. No need. The second thing that would happen is that 95% of seasonal anticipated flooding would cease. Because the places that the flooding gathers, like the corner of Dennis Mahabia Street, add sink retention ponds on the corner of Dennis Mahabia Street to the volume capacity of the highest flood, the highest precipitation ever recorded for that region, assuming that the jackasses have been keeping the data. If they haven't been keeping the data, I could probably access it through Florida, because Florida counts precipitation in the region for American purposes. And I could probably access it from them, thank God. I would lift up the Brian Lara Promenade, the surface of what you walk on now, what the vagrants sleep on now, and remove that. And everything from the cathedral to the Hyatt, I'd sink 50 feet down and create, for all intents and purposes, a massive swimming pool. That swimming pool would collect all the water that runs from the savannah down all those side streets into Port of Spain and collect it in a massive retention pond under Brian Lara Promenade. I'd cover it back after, and you wouldn't know when you're walking on Brian Lara Promenade that below you is the volume capacity capable of handling all of the water that runs down all of those side streets. And after the rain is over, if we're not using there as our hold and treatment facility, pump it to a hold and treatment facility. Sydenham spends millions of dollars buying fancy pumps, massive pumps. If you go down by South Key, you will see what small man syndrome means when you give them access to money. Because you don't need pumps and 10-inch pipes. A normal quarter-inch pump, quarter horsepower pump, could pump all the water out of the sea over time until it breaks down. A normal quarter horsepower pump that's in your yard. So it depends on the volume of water you want to move over what time. It's always arithmetic. It's always numbers, and numbers don't lie. So it's always numbers. So we could calculate that we have 500 million gallons of water to move within 12 hours because we need to empty the holding pond, because every 12 hours we can anticipate 500 million gallons of water. That's your working paper. That's how you determine the size of the pump and the size of the pipe and where the water going. All of that information is available to you right now. So the $300 million that the government signed yesterday to find out how to deal with flooding and drainage is theft. They are buying from you knowledge, they're buying for you knowledge they already have. And that is criminal corruption. This morning, in Trinidad and Tobago, the media that are material, the media owners that are material beneficiaries of all the corruption in Trinidad and Tobago that are part of the Old Boys Club, they will not treat that issue the way it needs to be treated. They will not investigate the way I just investigated for you. And they will block me from ever having access to state-owned, taxpayer-owned bandwidth airwaves to be able to tell the public. In fact, they will engage in blocking and throttling even my social media broadcasts so that the message doesn't get out. So you have to tell one to the other, everybody, that you know somebody who could fix it. Unlike Gary Griffith and Michaela Pandey and David Abdullah, whose job is to appear to be people who understand what they're doing. I take time to explain to you in depth and in detail how things could be done, where the information is, what the budget is, what the timeline is, what measurable and metrics are. So if you extrapolate everything that I just told you from Shagaramas to Dennis Mahathir Street to the Brian Lara Promenade to the country, because, and I want to quote Dr. Ray Falong, traffic occurs at events. All traffic is not national traffic. And you need to identify the event, all of the causative action, all the causative agents, so you can identify action. And that is basic science. That is basic science. We have people in government with more degrees than a thermometer who don't understand basic science. Basic science would have told you that if we knew by January 31st, 2020, that a pandemic was on its way to Trinidad, that is so viral that it could have led to massive death, as was written in the actual law, legal notice 34 of 2019. If we knew that then, and we had secured the nation then, shut down the borders then, there would not have been one single case of COVID-19 in Trinidad. Not one. Not one. If we knew that it was so strong that it was going to lead to economic collapse, we should have taken action then. Plenty of people have gone out of business. A lot of the problems people face right now being thrown out of their homes and is because of COVID and the mismanagement of COVID. I'm not going down that road. I'm just telling you that science allows you to put 50 tons of steel in the air, 500,000 tons of steel to float on the water. That's science. We understand science. And the science of water management is what allows Dominic Hadid to do in this bottle what Wasa should be doing with all the water falling from the sky for free. You see, this is a microcosm of a water plan. Capture, hold, treat, distribute. That's our plan for all our water. There's an actual country in the Middle East that sends scalding hot water through their pipes between 2 and 3 in the morning. They tell you don't use the water then, as they sanitize their pipelines every night. We could even engage in that. You never have to buy a bottle of water again in your life. That's a conversation for another time. But spending $300 million to go and find out why we have flooding, when we already know why we have flooding and we already know how to solve that, is government theft. And there is nobody. We have a powerless president whose job is to rubber stamp what the Prime Minister instructs her to do, and at different times in the year climb on the back of a van and pretend that she's inspecting our troops for an army that we have engaged in Dwen Olympics in Chagaramas and Wallaffield for no purpose that anybody could measure. In case our next Abu Bakr come, it would be good to have them. But in case our next Abu Bakr come, it would be good to be able to call America and tell them send Delta Force and take him out. But we play sovereign games and bullshit games and little dick games with the country. Stick a pin in that for a minute. We're spending $9 billion a year on national security, and we have an army. But we have 533 murders as of now. Trinidad and Tobago, the last 3 commissioners of police, Gary Griffith, McDonald Jacobs, Stephen Williams, have admitted that the guns are coming through the legitimate ports, which means that customs is not doing its job to protect the doors of the country. So what do we do? What do we do that? And why aren't we doing anything about that? Yesterday, the Express newspaper admitted to the world what I have been saying for years, that Trinidad and Tobago's justice system is engaging in a human rights atrocity. We have people in this country locked in jail cells, convicted of nothing, languishing for years longer than they would have been if they had been convicted and sentenced to the maximum. And nobody's saying anything. Because they're black. Because the majority of them are black. And to people who benefit from black poverty and black suffering, like the PNM and other people who are convenient black talking heads, who will come on the post and say, why are you using the word black? Use the word Afro, or use African, or use Afro-Trinbagonian. Because they specialize in little things. They don't take on the serious issues. This morning, any judge, any high court judge could summon the commissioner of prisons for the prisoner roll for all the cases that people are in remand yard for, and to call for everybody, habeas corpus, the entire roll of anybody who is not there for blood crimes, murder, treason, rape, everybody else, habeas corpus them to my court, so I can have them all, give them all the option to plead guilty, sentence them to time served, and send them home. Empty the jail cells of little people occupying jail cells that cost us per person between $25,000 and $30,000 a month just to house them, not counting what we pay Abood to move them up and down the road between courts. And when you check it, when you work it out, one prisoner costs you $500,000 to house and to keep when he is in there for thieving sneakers, Restorative justice would have suggested that we save the $500,000 and give that person an option at a development in life. Better yet, invest the $500,000 in developing him. Chances are, because of where he comes from, he's probably going to be illiterate because the school system, for some reason, and I asked Nyan Gatsby Dolly, how could we have some schools prestige and some schools failed if all the schools have the same curriculum, if all the schools are funded by the same state, if all the schools get the teachers from the same teacher college? We can't say that's because in the failed schools it's because they're black, because black people invented science. African people invented science while white people were still running around naked in England and Europe. Black people were charting the stars. So it's not like you could say, well, you know, Phil, it's because it's black people. Because I'm saying, it's not that they are stupid. In fact, if you're going solely on history, then they should be brighter than everybody else. So what else is amiss in this country? And all of this conversation is for you this morning to ask yourself, if any of what this man is saying to me today, true, if any of it, if he is saying that you could do a commission of inquiry into the banks where applications for finance is concerned to see if persons of different economic classes and colors benefit differently from access to bank finance, then we have a problem in Trinidad and Tobago that we are not addressing. And if anything this man is saying is true, then let's have a conversation about all of it. And that's what the Progressive Empowerment Party wants to do on Saturday at 5 p.m. at Bamboo number 1. Have a conversation about all of it. Step 1 to any problem is identifying the problem. You can't fix nothing till you know what's going on. You, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, you cannot afford to be lazy any longer. You cannot afford to pretend that tribal politics, that racist politics, that African Indian politics could ever benefit this country. Norway doesn't have racist politics. Norway has $242,000 set aside for each and every person. Trinidad has nothing but debt. We are a broken country, failed. Nothing works and we're a joke. So if you want to fix it, you have to ask yourself. A man went into a restaurant and he said to the cook, he said, I like all sorts of eggs. I like scrambled eggs, I like fried eggs, I like poached eggs, I like sunny side eggs, I eat eggs in an omelette. I can't eat these eggs. Who do I blame? The hen or the cook? We are blaming Trinidad for Trinidad's problems when the problem has always been the contract mafia owned and operated racist divisive parties, the PNM and the UNC. And you, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, you have to decide this morning, is my being Indian worth the suffering that comes with it if I choose to vote Indian? Is my being African worth the suffering that comes with it if I choose to vote African? My whining my neck in the road in a red Balize jersey, does it protect me when stray bullets flying through the door? Does it protect me if one of my loved ones lying bleeding on the side of the road waiting for an ambulance that may or may not ever come? Or if they get to the hospital, there be no doctor, or there may be a doctor but he's overwhelmed because there are 500 other people with injuries in front of mine? You gotta ask yourself if it's worth it to you. Because if it's not, if what you want is a country where you could whine your neck every day for yourself because you have a hefty bank balance and you own your own home so that when you're dead, your children have something to inherit, that's a reason to whine your neck. And if you want a government that gives the country a proper reason for everybody to wind their neck in the road, come out on Saturday. Come and stand together. Come and see what all of us standing together, talking about issues and looking for solutions feels like. We've done bullshit politics for 60 years. Trinidad is broken. Nothing works and we're in debt. If that's good enough for you, that's a reason to stay home. But if it's not, a reason to change your clothes and come out, organize your friends and family and come out and stand up and say, you know what? I'm doing this not just for my country. I'm doing this for me, for my children, for my future. I'm doing this so that it could be a better country. I'm doing this because there might be a chance that the education system could work. The tertiary education could mean jobs when you come out of the university with a degree. That there could be a chance that there'll be no more flooding. And in fact, the flood waters will be put in my taps and I can have water to wash my clothes and flush my toilet. That there'll be a chance that public health not leave so many people to die. Trinidad does not have to be a failed nation, but it is a failed nation. And while you have Kamala Persad-Bissessa and Keith Rowley engaging in bullshit political masturbation, instead of actually addressing the nation on important issues, he say, she say, here pulling bullshit. Nothing coming out of the PNM or the UNC is of any value to anybody. The parliament is a circus. Government in Trinidad is a joke. And there is nothing else. There is nothing else. If Michaela's last name wasn't Pandey, you wouldn't give her a second look. Ramona Ramdial and Dave Tanku are better MPs than she ever was. If her last name wasn't Pandey, you wouldn't care about patriotic front or patriotic back. So tell me, if it is enough to vote for people based on anything other than capacity, capability, and service, Brian Manning is a joke, and he is in Parliament because his last name is Manning. And that tells you where we, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, put our loyalty, not to ourselves and our children, but to naked foolishness. And it's time to fix that. And on the 19th of November, come out. Come out in your numbers. Stand up in Bamboo number 1. You don't have to endorse me. You don't have to join no party. You don't have to agree with everything I say. You don't have to pelt no stone and cuss nobody. You don't have to sing no song. Just come and hear. If what I told you this morning about solving water and flooding made any sense to you at all, come and hear how we'll solve education. I told the Minister of Education this morning, SEA is the #1 cause of mental illness in this country. And the only purpose it existed when it existed as a common entrance exam is because there weren't enough seats in the school. So you had a competition to see who could get there. Now there are enough. Why do we still have a SEA? Because we have jackasses in government and jackasses in opposition. And the only way to fix this country is to free the jackasses and let them roam where they could do nobody no more harm. You want a better country? Come out on Saturday, November 19th at Bamboo number 1 across from Grand Bazaar. Search till you find us. Put out the effort. Don't tell me how far you're living. Get on a bull cart if you have to. Walk and come, because it is in your best interest. Because when you have a problem, when the wolf reach your door, when the system collapses and you realize you need help, you will find me and you'll walk to me then. So if you need it and you want to fix it, build the machine that could rescue you in the future. Come this Saturday, 5 p.m. Doors open from noon. We have special guests, cultural dancers. Prophet Benjamin is coming to perform to bring the message to the ground, and other conscious artists and calypsonians. We're going to have a good event. Come and be a part of it. There'll be some refreshments, food till food done. If you want to bring something to add to the table, bring it. We want a better country, and this is the only way to do it. The flip side is, of course, we continue to pretend that we could blame the Africans to the PNM and blame the Indians to the UNC and continue to play that blame game, thinking that after an election, half a ship could sink and the other half could miraculously go its merry way. If you don't want to engage in political bullshit, if you want to make sense that is a benefit to everybody, come out on Saturday.